The recording was 230 years old. Arch-Surveyor Tharunek Vel of the Dominion Ascendancy played it 3 times before he believed his own translation matrix. A single human, seated at a metal desk, speaking into a camera with the unhurried certainty of someone filing a routine report. Station 7 is online. Calibration complete. Weapons systems nominal. In the event no threat materializes within the operational lifetime of this installation, maintenance protocols will transfer to the next generation of engineers. We do not expect to fire these guns. We are building them anyway. Tharunek Vel closed the file. Around him, the bridge of the Reckoning Absolute hummed with the activity of 47 crew members who did not yet understand what he had just heard. Through the forward viewport, the blue-white marble of the human homeworld hung in the dark, ringed by what his sensors had logged as debris fields and legacy orbital infrastructure, the dead husks of an early spacefaring age, corroded and inert. That was what the survey said. He had ordered his own survey 3 hours ago, just before the fleet crossed into human-claimed space. 11 warships. He hadn't needed 11. The Ascendancy's models rated the indigenous forces at Class 2 resistance, capable of nuisance, incapable of consequence. His private channel chimed. Arch-Surveyor. The voice belonged to Marat Ohan, his analytical second, young and precise and irritatingly thorough. I've completed cross-referencing the archival intercepts with current sensor readings. And? A pause that lasted exactly the wrong amount of time. Sir. The orbital platforms the survey logged as derelict. I'm reading active thermal signatures. Low level. Consistent with standby power, not decay. And the electromagnetic profiles are, another pause. They're consistent with charged capacitor arrays. Tharunek Vel turned from the viewport. How many platforms? Across all catalogued positions? Marat Ohan's voice had gone carefully flat. 412. Admiral Amara Osebansu received the Ascendancy's first hail from the command deck of Kwame's Promise, a vessel named for a man she'd never met but whose photograph hung in every ship in the Outer Defense Fleet. She was finishing coffee. Real coffee, grounds and everything, because she had learned in 30 years of service that you drank it when you could, when the communications officer looked up with the expression that meant something had shifted. They're hailing us, Admiral. Standard diplomatic frequency. Of course they are. She set down the cup. Let them wait 4 minutes, then open the channel. Lieutenant Commander Priya Sharma, her tactical officer, raised an eyebrow from the adjacent console. 4 minutes specifically? 4 minutes is long enough to seem considered, Osebansu said, and short enough that they don't think we're afraid. She straightened her collar. Are the stations reading? All 412, Sharma confirmed, quietly. Full active status. They powered up the moment the Ascendancy fleet crossed the marker buoy. Automatic, Osebansu said. Not a question. Just like they were designed. 230 years ago, Sharma said. Yes, Admiral. The Admiral nodded once, the way she nodded when something she'd planned for a long time was finally arriving on schedule. Her crew had seen that nod before. It did not make them feel safer. Tharunek Vel had conducted 47 first contacts. He understood the choreography, projected strength, calibrated threat, then the offer of terms that both parties understood were not actually terms. He knew how civilization surrendered. He had a gift for finding the precise angle of pressure that caused the structure to yield. When the human admiral's face appeared on his display, he expected to read her. He found he could not. She was perhaps 60 years of age, dark-skinned, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that looked at him with the polite attention of someone watching a weather forecast for a region they didn't live in. She held a ceramic cup. There was a small photograph affixed to the console beside her that he couldn't quite resolve. Arch-Surveyor, she said. The translation was immediate and clear. I'm Admiral Oseibansu, commanding the Outer Defense Fleet. I understand you've brought 11 ships into sovereign human space without prior notification or treaty agreement. A small pause. I'd like to know why. Thorunekvel had expected fear, or performance of courage, which was different. He had not expected the tone of a woman asking why a neighbor's dog was on her lawn. Admiral, he said. The Dominion Ascendancy extends its formal greeting to the human species. We have reviewed your civilization's development and determined that integration into the greater ascendancy would be mutually. Before you finish that sentence, Oseibansu said, I want to show you something. She touched a control. His own display populated with a sensor feed, not from his ships. From something else. Something that had been watching his fleet since the marker buoy, tracking every vessel with targeting precision that his own systems had not once flagged as active. His tactical officer made a sound that Thorunekvel had never heard from her before. The feed was tagged, Station 7. Online. All systems nominal. Those readings, Thorunekvel said, very carefully, are from your orbital platforms. Yes, said the Admiral. Your survey listed them as non-functional. Our survey said that, she agreed. We filed it that way. We file it that way every year. She took a sip of her coffee. We find it useful. Mare Tohun's voice came through the internal channel, stripped of its earlier flatness, sir. I'm now reading thermal signatures on the surface as well. Underground installations. I cannot determine depth or armament, but the power signatures are, sir, they're enormous. They appear to have been active for, a pause like a door closing slowly. Decades. At minimum. Thorunekvel looked at the woman on his screen. How long have you been prepared for this? Oseibansu considered the question as though deciding how honest to be. Station 7 came online in 2201, she said. That's the one that spotted you first. We have older ones, but they're a little long in the tooth, we keep them as backups. She set down the cup. Arch-surveyor, what do you know about the concept of a tripwire? He knew the concept. He had simply never encountered one at planetary scale. We built the first orbital platforms, the Admiral said, because someone in a room 2 centuries ago looked at the mathematics of interstellar civilization and said, something will come. Not if. When. She said it without drama. That was the part that unsettled him most. They didn't know who. They didn't know when. They built the platforms anyway. Every generation since then has maintained them, upgraded them, and added to them. A brief pause. We are a patient species, Arch-surveyor. It is, perhaps, our least understood quality. Thorunekvel's composure had been constructed over 47 years of field work and was not a fragile thing. He assembled it now deliberately. Admiral. You have orbital infrastructure. It is impressive. But 11 warships of the Ascendancy are already within the engagement envelope of 203 stations, Sharma said from off-screen, clearly not speaking to him, clearly not caring that he heard. At current drift rates, full coverage in 4 minutes. Oseibansu didn't look at her tactical officer. She kept her eyes on his face with the patience of someone who had already won an argument and was simply watching the other party catch up. I want to be clear with you, she said. Because I think clarity serves both of us here. She leaned forward very slightly. We have not fired a single platform weapon in 230 years of operation. Not one. We have had the capability, and we have not used it, because that was not the mission. The mission was readiness. A pause shaped like a blade. You are the first civilization to enter our space with a fleet rather than a greeting. You are the reason those engineers built what they built. And they are not here to see it, but I'd like to think they'd find some satisfaction in the fact that it worked exactly as designed. You're telling me, Thorunekvel said slowly, that you will not fire. I'm telling you, Osebansu said, that I haven't decided yet. And I'd like you to sit with that distinction for a moment. Mare Tohun's next report came 11 seconds later. She did not use the formal address. Tharunek. The underground installations, I have a depth estimate now. Some of them are 3 kilometers down. They predate our sensor records of this system. And I'm reading what appear to be missile tube arrangements that would, her voice stopped. Started again. The yield calculations. If even a fraction of what I'm reading is accurate, this planet has been capable of destroying a hegemony-class fleet since before the Ascendancy knew this world existed. He sat with it. He was very good at his work. He had read civilizations like texts and found the places where the spine softened. In 47 first contacts he had never once encountered this, a people who had not been provoked into building weapons, who had not been frightened into readiness, who had simply, in the calm arithmetic of survival, decided to be prepared. For anyone. For anything. For as long as it took. The terrible part was not the weapons. The terrible part was the patience. Admiral. His voice was level. He was proud of that. What are your terms? Terms? Osebansu looked briefly confused, then composed herself. Arch-surveyor, I'm not offering terms. I'm ending a conversation before it becomes something we both regret. She picked up the ceramic cup again. You're going to turn your fleet around. Not because I'm threatening you, I want to be very precise about this. But because you've done the same calculation I would do in your position, and you've arrived at the same answer. He had. The Ascendancy, she continued, is welcome to send a diplomatic vessel. Single ship. No weapons charged. We'll receive them properly. We're not interested in conflict. A pause. We were never interested in conflict. We simply refused to be unprepared for it. She reached forward to close the channel, then stopped. One more thing, she said. That recording you found. From Station 7's commissioning. The engineer who made it was named Delphine Marchetti. She died in 2247. She never saw a ship from another star. She spent 40 years maintaining equipment she hoped would never need to be used. A small silence. I think you should know her name. I think it matters that someone like her existed. The channel closed. Tharunekvel sat for a long time in the silence of his bridge. Around him, no one spoke. The targeting feeds from Station 7 and its 311 siblings continued to paint his fleet in patient, unhurried light. He issued the order. The fleet turned. As the reckoning absolute came about, his sensors made one final sweep of the human orbital architecture. 412 platforms gliding in their ancient tracks, systems nominal, capacitors charged, waiting with the deep vegetable patience of things built not for any particular enemy but for the simple, terrible certainty that an enemy would eventually arrive. They had been right. They had waited 2 centuries to be right. And they had not celebrated. The woman on the screen had drunk her coffee and spoken about a dead engineer's name as though that were the part worth remembering. He filed his report 3 hours later, in the long silence of the transit home. It ran to 11 pages and contained one sentence that would be read by the Ascendancy Council and debated by analysts for the next 40 years. The humans are not dangerous because of what they have built. They are dangerous because of what they were willing to become, quietly, over generations, without applause or urgency, against an enemy they couldn't name and hadn't met, simply because the mathematics of the universe suggested that patience was the price of survival. On Kwame's promise, Admiral Osebansu stood the watch until the last Ascendancy engine signature faded past the marker buoy. Sharma appeared at her shoulder. They're gone. Yes. Do you think they'll send the diplomatic vessel? Osebansu looked at the viewport for a moment, at the distant glitter of Station 7 catching the sun. She thought of Delphine Marchetti in a cold room with a camera, filing a routine report about guns she expected no one would ever need to fire. "Eventually," she said. "Everyone does, once they understand." "Understand what?" The Admiral retrieved her cup. The coffee had gone cold, but she drank it anyway. "That we were never asleep," she said. "We were just waiting for something worth waking up for." In the subsequent decade, 6 other spacefaring civilizations would approach human space with weapons charged. None of them fired. All of them sent diplomatic vessels afterward. The platforms maintained their silent vigil, and the engineers who tended them continued to file their quarterly reports: systems nominal, weapons charged, no threats engaged. It became, across the galaxy, the most famous bureaucratic routine in recorded history. Proof that the most terrifying weapon a civilization could build was simply the willingness to be ready forever.